welcome to our guest, Alicia. Before I hand over to Alicia, I'd like to tell you how amazing she is first. Alicia is a highly experienced leadership and executive coach and business management specialist, and has coached many leaders, including entrepreneurs, business owners, including myself, C-level executives as well. She has a real passion for seeing others lead well and succeed in their businesses and teams. She also co-owns multiple businesses, including Global Citizens Holdings, Inc., Land Scouts, Supercharged Offers, and Wilder for Women in Business, focused on leadership in business and investing in land. Her business ventures provide efficient real estate marketing and world-class data solutions which assist other real estate investors to digitally transform their businesses for increased results. She's based in Australia, but also operates out of the USA as well. So truly a global professional. Welcome, Alicia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. It's so weird to hear your own bio read out, because like I know what all my businesses are, but you hear it and you're like, there's a lot in there.
Right. I think it's fantastic. We're very, I'm very lucky to have some amazing people like yourself in the network to be able to talk to. Certainly at times like this, and as we know, the 8th of March is International Women's Day. But I thought, one day is definitely not enough to celebrate amazing ladies. And so here we are. We decided to do a whole month, and you're the first one out the gate.
Yeah. And I love that it's International Women's Day, because I literally work across every time zone in the world. So I feel like I'm good to be the first cab off the rank, because international is my middle name.
Trying to get an appointment with you is like trying to see I don't know, it's like multiple time zones. It's crazy.
It is crazy. Crazy good though.
So we're very, very fortunate. I'm very grateful to have you come on and let's talk about your expertise and your experience in
absolutely
dealing with senior teams. And the theme for International Women's Day is dealing with bias, unconscious bias, where men may feel threatened in some way if they're dealing with a woman, or anything like that. What's been your experience with these types of things?
Yeah, I've had a lot of experience with this, both on the receiving end, but also on the coaching and consulting side too. I think I started in the little promo snippet that we did by talking about my years of working for others, let's say, before I went out and started on my own. Yeah. And I was working in oil and energy and gas, and then IT professional services, very male-dominated organizations. So very early on in my career, I saw the side of unconscious bias creep in. But let me just say up front, unconscious bias, it is by nature unconscious. Nature versus nurture, right? It's often about how we are brought up and the environments that we get exposed to early on that sets the scene for how we think about men versus women. And for anybody listening, there's actually a really good test that you can do online from Harvard. It's called the Harvard Implicit Bias Test. It's free. And it actually gives you a really good insight into those unconscious biases when you have to answer questions and really think about, is that a man versus a woman, man versus woman? Interesting enough, myself, I've got my own biases based upon how I grew up, that I see men as workplace and women as home. Now, that's just based upon my own upbringing, right? So I've had to even challenge my own biases over many, many years and continually remind myself that I do have a place in business. I am allowed to be in business at the level that I am, and God damn it, I deserve it. So, it's interesting how those biases creep in, but coming back to my experiences with them. So early on, these unconscious biases, for anybody listening, they can creep in very subtly, such as a man in a workplace who may be more senior than you, or perhaps has, different experiences to you. It's all about lived experience, by the way. Turning to you and saying, have you got that? Are you up with me? Like, are you on the same page? You're like, well, duh, yeah, I am. I've been here just as long as you. So it's just those little things that can creep in every now and then that aren't deliberate. They're just unconscious, all the way up through to systemic issues in organizations. So you mentioned WILDA before, which is the Women in Leadership and Development Alliance. So what my business partner, Karen, and I have really tried to do there is go into organizations that are traditionally male dominated. So I mentioned STEM earlier in our promo too, which is science, technology, engineering, maths. Any organization that you have these days pretty much has departments that are very STEM focused. And anyone who's in a STEM role, pretty much you're surrounded by men for most of it. Think about engineers. How many female engineers do you think you know, Adam?
I know some, but not many.
Not many. Same in the tech world, same in the science world. Like they exist, but they tend to be far and few between, but they also don't tend to rise to the levels of leadership in those organizations and industries as well. So we really started to approach the bias in that from a systemic perspective. Now, to come back to your question on that, what's my experience and what have I seen and how have I impacted all of that as well? Where we start is on two levels, because one, you've got to start with women in an organization, regardless if you're self-employed or working for somebody else, and work through our own syndromes and biases. And when I say syndromes, I'm talking about things like imposter syndrome, princess syndrome, inability to claim your achievement syndrome, and I can talk about those in more detail. So us owning our own space is number one. Secondary, though, is the systemic, which is organizationally, how do we create space for women to break through with that support? And what we've been working on in organizations around that is the concept of sponsorship. Not mentorship, sponsorship. So this is where somebody who's deemed as a future leader in this organization as a woman, but maybe might not rise due to self-feeling, self-worth, or having a male above them that's holding that back, has a very senior sponsor in the organization that helps them to navigate through those ranks. So sponsorship as opposed to mentorship can have a huge impact on what we see with women achieving excellence.
Right, that makes total sense. So, I was fine because obviously being a neurolinguistic programming trainer and, in hypnosis and, we're dealing with the mind in the majority of the time and, with a specialism of teaching how to trade in the financial markets.
Yeah.
We deal with a lot of, it's a lot of self-worth and worthiness. Do I deserve to actually make money this way?
There's imposter syndrome right there.
Right there, exactly right. So like you say, it's incredibly important to go back to the source, back to, our behaviors. What are the patterns that have been ground in from when we were really young,
Yeah.
Because all sorts of things will stem from
100%. And even, being more self-aware of listening to that inner voice. I know when I went into business for myself the first time more than a decade ago, it took me 2 years to make that decision. 2 years. Because in those 2 years, I was so used to being stuck in a job. It was a 6-figure job. It was paying great. I loved it. But I just kept going, there's something more, there's something more, there's more that I want to do in this world and there's more impact I want to make. But the 2 years that held me back was the voices that went, you're not good enough to do this, you can't do this. And the second one was, well, what if you did do this, but then people knocked you down, then what? So it was those voices, which is the imposter syndrome, first of all, but then the reluctance to claim our achievements. Because one thing that you see that's quite common in a lot of women is when we do rise high, we don't often talk about it with others. We're like, we play it down. It's going well, but, and I've had to learn to embrace that over the years and go, actually, we just had our best month ever in business last month and I'm going to sing that to the rooftops and I don't care. But that's taken years of me unraveling a pattern where I never grew up that was the way to do things. So, you're right. You've always got to go back to source and go, what do I see in myself in that I need to tackle first? Which is why I love the truth of you, right? Because whatever your truth is, that will play out in business.